Israel has attacked senior Hezbollah leader Hashem Safieddine and presumed successor to Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. While Israel has claimed to have eliminated Safieddine, confirmation of the news of his death is still awaited, with local sources stating that he may have survived the attack directed specifically upon him. There are more than 1,900 people that have been killed and over 9,000 wounded in Lebanon in almost a year of cross-border fighting, with most of these deaths occurring in the past 2 weeks. The Israeli military has warned people in Lebanon to evacuate communities that are outside a UN-declared buffer zone, signaling that it may widen its ground operation that was launched earlier. It is also important to put into perspective Israel's seven-front war as described by Netanyahu himself and the ramifications that constantly intensify with regards to the war that could possibly have. Earlier today, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei reiterated its stance during a massive crowd gathering for a rare Friday sermon, where the leader addressed Iran's recent missile strikes on Israel and upheld the legitimacy of the Palestinian resistance, reinforcing Iran's unwavering support for Palestine and calling for Muslim unity. The development comes in line with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi's arrival in Beirut to discuss the ongoing war with the Lebanese officials. I'm going to start my conversation. I have with me Iranian voices as well as Israeli spokespersons who are going to help us better understand the situation and the conflict and whether there is going to be an end to this war. Starting off, I have with me Fatem Karim Khan, investigative journalist and fact checker from Tehran. Thank you, Fatem, for joining me on the telecast. And my first question about the statement that has just a few minutes ago been made by the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, saying that the ballistic missile strikes on Israel just 2 days ago were legitimate and Iran would not deter from doing this again and striking Israel if needed. Now, would this not lead to further escalation of war?
Thank you for having me. First of all, I have to insist that I'm not speaking from the point of view of the Iran government. I am an independent journalist and I am here to describe the situation. But to answer your question, I have to say when there is a shadow of war on the whole regime, every country has to try to defend itself. It is not just about Iran, it is about Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, any country in the region. There is a huge shadow of war on the regime right now. So any country will make some statements and try to show how their capability to defend itself and their people.
Right. And in terms of this seven-front war that Israel says is being waged by Iran with the help of the proxies, which is Hezbollah, and there are militia from Syria and Iraq, and you also take a look at the Hamas conflict that once again reignited on October 7th, and you take a look at the Houthis in Yemen. And on one side, America and the West terms these organizations, these proxies of Iran, to be terrorist organizations, and on the other side Iran portrays them to be some kind of freedom fighters and revolutionaries. Where does how do we balance it out? Where does the truth lie?
I guess we cannot speak from the point of view of truth. We are not in a position to say which of these names about these groups of any other groups is legitimate right now. Lots of people in Lebanon don't call Hezbollah or Hamas as terrorist groups. Lots of people in Iran don't call them terrorists, but in and outside Iran, lots of people call them terrorists. I cannot understand that. But why Iran defending them? Because Lebanon is an ally, because Palestine is an ally, because Syria is an ally. and those countries who are allies, they defend each other. It is not something, some strange fact or something that occurs to us just yesterday or this week or that week.
Okay, let's get in him, Edgar. Okay, how do you comment to the statement that has been made by Fatem, or observation that one country's terrorist is another country's freedom fighter?
Well, I don't believe that, because the moment you target civilians and you don't target army troops and strategic points, and you target civilians, and that's actually what has been done in October 7th, just shooting and killing and slaughtering and murdering and raping people in kibbutzes and in the Nova Festival and in totally people who are civilians. At that point, it's terrorist. When you're shooting unprovocatively on civilian targets in the northern part of Israel without any means or without any provocation, it means that you're a terrorist. You're not a freedom fighter, and that is totally untrue, and that is
okay.
You get what I mean.
Okay, Ambassador Ashok Sajjan, a difficult time in the Middle East. The regional crisis continues to become worse as days pass by. There you have allies of Israel. Top of the rung is United States of America. That's a strong financial and military and diplomatic support that comes from there, versus Iran, that at this point of time is being supported by China and Russia. How do these players and the allies and the blocs that have been organically created are going to then allow for some sort of semblance of peace to happen in the coming months, if not weeks? Jyota, would you like to respond to that?
Well, if you're talking about in terms of peace, if I can mention
yeah, Jyota, go ahead.
Me, or he's replying, I think.
Jyota, can you respond to that?
Yeah, okay. Now the thing is, you see, when we are talking in terms of peace and all, did you hear what Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had to say today? I think it is the most monstrous statement possible, where he talked about, where he justified the Hamas attack. In my eyes, in the eyes of any sane person, that statement can only come from a terrorist. And that is what I think, whatever statement he gave today, that classifies Ali Khamenei as a terrorist. Now, when you have to deal with a terrorist, what exactly are you going to do? I mean, as it is, as you know, Megha, I just came back from Israel last week, in fact, and from whatever I heard over there, in terms of, Iran is that octopus, the head of the octopus and the limbs. There are 7 or 8 limbs which are all terror proxies. Now, when you are looking at that, the only way this menace can be stopped, this menace can be curbed, is when you take out the head of the octopus. And what is the head of the octopus in this case? The clerical regime. Now, how they do it, when they will do it, what exactly the future is, that we do not know. Because who is the replacement if this regime is even taken out, if it is possible at all? The thing is that whether targeted assassinations, whether through missile strikes, whatever, if this regime is taken out, who is going to replace it? In terms of sitting here in India, we do not know, and frankly, both sides are anti-us. Okay, so we have to be very careful about whichever way go. Okay. But yes, in terms
it's also interesting, because when you talk about designating a certain organization and proscribing them as terrorists, India has been hesitant in actually calling Hezbollah and calling the Houthis and the Hamas as terrorist organizations.
So this is exactly the point. You see, we have, in terms of as Indians, I mean, I have seen, I went there, as I said, I went to Gaza envelope, I went to Beiri, I went to that Nova thing, and what Hamas has done over there, it is unbelievable cruelty and barbarity and brutality, even the worst kind of, we did not see even during 26/11 terror attack in India. So, you see, when we are looking at that, in spite of that, the Indian government is not calling them terrorists, primarily because of our own interest of our own people, of our diaspora that is spread all over that area. Think of the number of Indians who are there. If India, I mean, Mr. Modi, I mean, condemning what happened on October 7 led to so much uproar, if you remember. You see, and now if we go and brand them as terrorists, what happens is that our people will be under threat on that, because the Arab streets will be after them. Okay, our people will be under threat. Think in terms of the money that comes in from there. When it comes to in terms of remittance, think of our port Chabahar. Oh, the fact of the matter is that Iran has been trying to get us out for a long time, but it is important for us to be present there, to keep an eye on Pakistan, to keep an eye on what is going on China. So that is the reason why, in fact, last week I would say even our Navy ships went there at Bandar Abbas, I mean, conducting exercises. So you see, diplomacy follows a different path, strategic interests follow a different path, and human interests follow a different path often. And I think this is the case. Just because our government has not said that, okay, Hamas, not yet said that Hamas is a terrorist organization, doesn't mean the people of India in general do not feel that Hamas is not a terrorist organization.
Okay, all right. I also have with me Burzine Wagmar from the Center of Iranian Studies at the University of London. Burzine, how do you view the situation? There have been obviously an outrage that has been witnessed in the international community, both which is in favor of the Israelis and their counter attack after there has been a terror strike on the 7th of October, and on the other side there are these calls that are being made about the reported genocide of Palestinians, and now there have been reported killings that have been taking place in Lebanon. In such a state where the world is very decisively divided, how is there going to be any way of negotiating peace between the two sides?
Let's get some clarity and certitudes going. First things first, Meghna. Iran is the cancer eating away at the destiny of the entire Middle East. It is the fount of all terror and problems, not just for Israel. This has nothing to do with Israel. It has to do with the entire Arabian Peninsula, all states in the Arab regime, including the GCC states, for whom Iran has been an existential threat since 1979. What has the Islamic Republic achieved even with this performative display of 181 missiles being fired at Israel, and with Khamenei's address at Tehran University for the Friday Jummeh prayers today? Nothing at all, because what has happened in the last 48 hours is that Iran has not been able to establish deterrence. It has exposed its military and technological inferiority. It has only hardened the US and the West's position, who have unequivocally supported Jerusalem in what has happened, including Tokyo and the Japanese Prime Minister, if you recollect. And it has created a critical opening for Israel to pave the way forward to take out this regime if it comes to it. And that brings me to my latter point. Any one of the 181 missiles which were fired this week, or the 170 April past, could have carried a nuclear warhead. And Meghna, please remember, according to the latest IAEA report of August 2024, Iran's stockpile of uranium enrichment has been upped to 60%. That is 165 kilos. It's up by 20% from the last report of May 2024. So they've been busy at it since the October 7th massacre of Jews. Not Israelis, Jews, because it was Hamas out to get Jews, plain and simple. It had nothing to do with politics or with Israel or territories. It was pure bone marrow cosmic hatred of Jewry and Jews. That's what Hamas was embarking upon on 7th October. And 24 hours later, when Hezbollah also initiated the attacks, leading to the uprootment of 60,000 Israelis in northern Israel, who are homeless practically since then. And that leads me to the point to wind up and point out that you require 90% enrichment in order to carry a warhead. So, and if the West just sits by, incompetent, ignorant, and sheer moral cowardice to appease the mullahs, we can see that this is going to lead to a doomsday scenario. And you can be sure of it, that Jerusalem will not let that happen. as an existential threat to the state since 1948. And nor would the Muslim countries of the region, the Arabian Peninsula, even if the population on the so-called Arab street is in revolt and has a cognitive dissonance about Israel and Jews, you can be sure that Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Muscat, Bahrain would be more than happy to see this regime go, which has been a nuisance for them, as I iterated, since 1979.
Okay. Ambassador Sajjanar, what are your views, particularly in an effort by Israel and its allies and a number of Arab nations that are resistant to the threat of Iran to bring about a regime change? Is it really that easy? And even if there was a regime change, what is the guarantee that the Iranian ideology towards Israel is going to be a transformative one?
Yeah, thank you very much, Megha. I think that's a very important question that you pose. What is the guarantee that whatever is the follow-up regime after the, the Islamist, whichever way you call them, radicals, or, those who are occupying the positions of power and authority in Iran, once they go, and what is the guarantee that those who come after them are not going to be equally radical, if not more radical, than what they are? But I think as far as the regime change is concerned, Megha, the other countries might secretly wish for it, or at least to ensure that the preeminence or the dominance of Iran does not grow, does not expand in the coming days. And that is why you would have seen that while the Arab street has been out there demonstrating on, as far as the neighborhood, as far as the Gulf is concerned, as far as the Arabian Peninsula is concerned, but as far as these countries are concerned, not one of them has raised a little finger. You might sort of say whatever the figures are. I don't know what the accurate figures are, but every day, people seem to be exaggerating or expanding the figures. From 30 it goes to 35, all of a sudden from 35 to 40, 45,000. I heard someone say yesterday 50,000 people have been killed, out of them 30%, 40% are women and children. I don't know how in these times it is possible to have an assessment of this nature, but that is a side issue, meaning even if it was, the numbers were not as large, the numbers have been quite high, and that is something that is a matter of very serious concern and disturbance. And, as India has said, in all these such cases also humanitarian law also needs to be followed. But we also hear what Israel says, that the Hamas and the Hezbollah use ordinary people as human shields, and they have their weaponry and they have their equipment and ammunition in such places like the hospitals, like schools, like madrasas. So, and the tunnels are under these such institutions, such buildings. So there is no way out for Israel but to go after them.
Okay.
In bombing these.
Okay.
But, I think Israel definitely wants a regime change. And maybe Mr. Biden, when he came, he did not, he wanted to have a working relationship with the leadership in Iran. That unfortunately did not work out. I think it was Mr. Trump who was much more aggressive in pushing back against the Iranian leadership.
Right.
So we'll really have to wait and see as to how this goes. But there has been, the last word, Megha, on this, there has been, some way of mending fences between the UAE and Iran, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. They have been having exchange of visits and delegations, but none of these countries want Iran to have a position of preeminence, dominance, influence as far as the region is concerned, because it will act against their own survival. It will act against their own stability, because that is what Iran will promote through its proxies, which have been carrying on these terrorist acts.
Fatim, would you like to comment again a regime change in Iran Iran has made a lot of enemies within the Middle East region, and also about this, coming of powers with Iran at this point in time siding with Russia and China. How does this play out?
Actually, I don't think about regime change as easily as you guys and your commenters are speaking about. Regime change is not something that you can do by a clap of hand. Regime change is something very big, and I don't see it coming in Iran for whatever price you can think of. But when it comes to Iran and Israel relationship and the politics and geopolitics of the regime, you have to have this fact in your minds that even the last regime, the monarchies in Iran, wasn't that much keen of Israel, and they wasn't that much friendly with Israel, even if they said so, but they wasn't that much friendly. When our other commenter in your program said, if all of those Gulf countries don't want Iran in this position, how do you interpret this last days Iran's president travel in Qatar and those diplomatic conversations? And to my Israeli colleagues, I 100% condemn what Hamas did in 7th of October. There is no morality in such an attack. But can you condemn what is Israeli army is right now doing in Gaza and Lebanon?
Okay.
Okay. Just
Okay, all right. I also have with me Peter Baum, and let's hear it from you, Peter. Can there be a fair analysis be drawn, not siding towards one side or the other? Is there even a possibility here?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for having me. And I think all of our guests have contributed magnificently to this debate. I'm just going to state what's happening at the moment and where I see it going. I truly believe that after the October the 7th attack, Israel took a decision to decimate Hamas. And that she has definitely done. Hamas don't pose any kind of the military threat now that they did prior to October the 7th. And therefore, one of Iran's limbs, if you like, has been completely severed, if not totally amputated. Hezbollah and the Houthis, like Hamas, are just subservient stooges of the Iranian regime. And when Iran orders Hezbollah to up the ante with the Houthis, they did so, but what they didn't expect was the kind of devastating response that Israel is currently engaging in. I have no doubt again that Israel's response to Hezbollah will be the same as it was with Hamas. They will try and decimate Hezbollah as much as possible. We've seen this in the bombings in Lebanon at the moment. And Israel is willing to pay the political price at the United Nations and with all the street protests that we see in Europe, in other parts of the world. Israel has never been popular at the United Nations, and that doesn't bother her at all. The main priority is for Israel to defeat those Iranian proxies that present the threat to Israel's existence.
Okay, how feasible is it for Iran to continue this war indefinitely? We see a strong military and financial support coming in to Israel's aid by United States of America, but can Iran at this point of time go on waging the war with the kind of constraints it has when it comes to finances and military equipment?
Short term, I don't believe it can. I believe it can, but medium term, no. And let's be clear of one thing. The Iranian propaganda machine is absolutely fantastic. We see this on social media, we see it through the Iranian news bulletins, but one has to remember as well that there is a very strong domestic opposition to the mullahs in Iran. This is what we don't see, and that could grow if Israel continues to or to respond to the Iranian missile attacks on Israel. And I'm sure Israel will do, and I think that will create more internal domestic strife within Iran. I think one of our guests, I think the first guest, very rightly said that Iran is trying to create a geopolitical total Muslim unity against Israel. That's not going to happen. We've seen there's no Muslim unity at the moment in the world. We've seen the civil war in Syria, we've seen civil war in Yemen, Sudan and Libya. We've seen the Sunni bloc nations absolutely delighted about the way that Israel is weakening its proxies. So make no doubt about this. Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain and Kuwait, even Morocco, are absolutely delighted. Qatar is not, because Qatar is the main funder of global Shia terrorism worldwide and has been funding such Shia Islamic groups and other terrorist groups across the Middle East and the Sahel and Africa for decades. So Qatar is not pleased with this, and that's why the Iranian foreign minister and ministers visit Qatar first of all. But believe me, the other Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, are absolutely delighted. Now, one thing that none of us know at this moment in time, I have been actually quite surprised about the depth of support that Biden and Harris have given Israel, given that they need to play to a domestic audience for the coming election. Nevertheless, we understand that the US played quite a part in helping Israel with the various two Iranian missile attacks.
Right.
If Trump wins the election, and we don't know that at the moment, the polls are too close to call, but if Trump wins the election, that will be a real game changer negatively for Iran. What we can say, though, is whatever happens, the real winner out of all this is China. China is rubbing her hands with glee at seeing Russian involvement in Syria, Russian getting bogged down in Ukraine, Iran getting bogged down in the Middle East, and China is just waiting on the sidelines, saying the right things diplomatically at the UN, but really waiting to see whoever side wins, they're going to benefit economically from it. But if Trump gets in, if Trump does get in, then I see that being as a real positive for, let's say, the pro-Israel axis.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.